share his experience. Thank you, Ari.
Yeah. Thanks. I guess I'm gonna back up. I want to thank Claudia for that detailed discussion about zoning law. It was very good and very in depth. But I want to back up and kind of give like just a bird's eye perspective. But before I do that, I want to find out how many, and I just want to see a show of hands. How many people are from Ward 1? 2? 3? Currently live there? 4? 5? 6? 7? 8? Okay. All right, so I'm curious, in Ward 1, do we have any volunteers to talk about what brought you here? And because the title of the flyer basically was, how to use the PUD process to fine-tune our rights at zoning. So what rights do you want fine-tuned if you're from Ward 1? I'm curious.
I'd like to speak to that because I was a resident of Ward 1 for 25 years, and I was evicted 2014 because I couldn't find work. So I'm shocked that we don't have this room filled with African heritage people. We have been around other people. African Americans have been pushed out of this whole city nonstop for the last 25 years. I'm a graduate of Howard University. I luckily had family in New Jersey, which is where I'm from. I had to move to New Jersey, which I'm writing about now. Luckily, I've come back to DC like October 1 of last year, and I'm in Ward 4 because I couldn't find anything in Ward 1. But I'm a resident of Ward 1, and I know at least 10 African American women who have been evicted from Ward 1 who are educated like me. And it's African American women, not other kinds of people. Because we once, like if you were older, gray hair, oh, dye your hair, blah, blah, blah. You're not acceptable. Your skin is too dark to go and get a job with these people. But it's outrageous how African Americans are being pushed out because we don't have work. If you don't have work, you can't pay your rent, and you cannot eat. So the reason I came, my friend Mary Hall here, I just ran into her. I didn't see I did not see your flyer, but I'm in Ward 1, but I'm paying enormous amount. I mean, Ward 4, which is where the only ward I could find that I wasn't going to 7 or 8 because I don't know anyone, and my environment is over here from Ward 1, which I would like to be back. But, and I did go to our mayor. The only person I got any kind of assistance was from Jim Graham, who passed away. I went to his funeral. I went to the mayor's grave. I went to different mayors who have been here. Pratt, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, oh, there's too many of you all in this situation.
So housing insecurity.
Right.
Definitely housing insecurity. Insecurity, housing insecurity.
To live in
correct. Thank you.
One of the main reasons. And being African American, it's race also.
Thank you.
Because you cannot get a place
Thank
or
you.
a job. So.
I can say that jives with a lot of what I've seen, so I'm in agreement with you. Thank you. Wards 2 and 3, I'm gonna lump y'all together. I hope you don't get mad at me. But anyone from 2 or 3 that have any issues, or what were your issues with coming here? Oh, one, more from 1. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I'm in a housing project in Ward 1. 6 years now.
Okay.
I know that the funding I got from HUD, for nonprofit housing providers, is pushing $100,000. Yet I'm not, my right to own a home has been cut off. Yet I'm supplying all these monies to an industry that should ought to create cooperative aspects and opportunities for its tenants. What we're acting as deed of trust. Get a property, keep it up. Like any person who calls himself a homeowner, you only have a deed of trust. And you keep the property according to the regulations laws for land. Fine, well, tenants and low income housing garages do the same thing. You keep the property out to keep it going.
Okay.
You never get appreciation, you have a right to ownership.
Okay, all right, so 2 and 3, and we're gonna keep it real brief. I just wanna understand the issues. Okay, go ahead.
I'm Nancy McWhitten from North Korean ANC Commissioner and also former chair of the committee on money. And the reason that I'm here, I worked on a couple of PUDs in Ward 3, very, very different types of projects, both proposed by the community. I've also testified on McMillan and on Berry Farms.
Okay.
My perspective is that PUDs are the primary reason we have an affordable housing crisis.
Yes.
And I don't think people realize how PUDs are being used and how prolific they are, and that they are a major, major tool for producing market rate housing and eliminating some of our more affordable housing through redevelopment type projects. So my perspective is that we need very fundamental reform of the PUD process, and we need to have a new vision for what the purpose of the PUD process is, and it needs to be a much more inclusive, participatory process.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. And I'm gonna lump 4 and 5 together too. Anyone from 4 or 5 want to speak a little bit about why they're here? You go ahead.
So I'm also Nana Boston-Tonia, originally from Ward 1, but what I've noticed is that I am now in Ward 5, and it's the same type of challenge and issue, which is that there is no affordable housing. And because I focus primarily on senior issues, there's very little accessible housing. People can't afford to stay in the community, and eventually the rents push people out, and then you're stuck because you can't get back into the city.
Yes.
And that to me seems, and it's also, I think I think that there's something with ownership and housing one, and I've noticed that all of the housing lots have slowly been turned over and flipped.
Cool. So I'm from 8. I'm gonna speak for 7 and 8, but I'm not gonna speak for them. I'm gonna speak for myself. But I'm here. The reason why I'm involved in this sort of thing is because gentrification has not hit Ward 7 or 8 yet. I mean, it started. It's a process, and they have the things there to facilitate it happening. You see the Anacostia Art Center, the Black Box Theater. They're getting ready for the 11th Street Bridge project. They have planned unit developments, PUDs, PUDs, planned all up and down Martin Luther King Boulevard, all up and down Good Hope Road. And so I want to get in front of it. And the PUD process is a good way to do that for all communities. I hear housing insecurity as an issue, economic opportunity as an issue. I hear the loss of affordable housing as an issue. And these are all things, as shared by the ANC. What was your name again? Nancy. As shared by Nancy, that are exacerbated by the PUD process. So if you could imagine, and like I said, I'm going to take a real bird's eye view of this. A PUD is when a developer wants to come into your community and he wants to do something on a piece of land that he's not allowed to do. And he's not allowed to do it because you live there. And that's the community that you guys put there. Like you chose to live in this community. And the community you chose to live in is full of row houses, full of historic homes, has side yards, has backyards. That's where you wanted to live. That's where you chose to live. That's where you bought your property. That's where you chose to rent. And it has a flow to it. It has an atmosphere, an environment. This is where you live. This is your home. Where you bring your family or not. And zoning has a lot to do with that. And so like on the very basic level, zoning is putting a bush in the middle of an island or like a boulevard so people don't crosswalk. You have a line of hedges there, and so that people don't jaywalk. So you got to go to the crosswalk to cross the street now because there are a bunch of bushes there. But you can also push out old people from a community with your zoning. How you are you gonna have parking spaces? So the planned unit development is 0.9 miles from Metro. But according to everybody, you know, that's on the Metro line. And so they're like, oh, we want to build this 2,000 unit place building in a neighborhood where most of the structures only can accommodate maybe 5 people or 8 people or 4 people. And we want some flexibility to do it, you know, because normally the zoning laws may say, okay, well, you need to have a certain number of parking spaces here. And so they'll build their building and they'll ask for flexibility. Well, we can't provide 2,000 parking spaces for all these units, but it's 0.9 miles from Metro, so they're all going to be walking. We'll put some bike share here. You know, they can get there some sort of way. And so they allow them that flexibility. They drop this 2,000 unit PUD in your neighborhood full of luxury housing. Everybody who moves in there, you know, probably the building has a higher population than 5 or 6 blocks in the neighborhood. All the businesses there start to accommodate the people in that building, the people who are living there regardless of what their income is. But anyway, so let's go back to the building and the flexibility they requested and the lack of elderly people in the city. Well, once they decide that they're not going to have any parking spaces at that building, I mean, how many older people are going to feel like walking 0.9 miles to the Metro or getting on a bike share? And so the way that you plan the city out has an impact on the demographics of the city, whether or not black people are getting pushed out. Some of the ways that we do this is we see subsidized housing being built by Metro that is 60 AMI. And 60 AMI is $50,000. And so really we're talking about subsidized housing for people who are in their first job out of grad school, or, you know, are college grads, or, you know, maybe on their parent subsidy as well. So this isn't housing going towards African American families. At some point it might have been. Maybe 60 AMI was something that, you know, they could do, but the market has been so distorted by the planning. 60 AMI is a high income now. Like, you have to make a decent amount of money to get this affordable housing. So what we see is the PUD process shaping what our city looks like. How can we get involved? I take a different stance than some people. I think managing this whole PUD process, I think it has a lot to do with your expectations from the very beginning. And to express this, I'm just going to draw on what the process is from a technical standpoint. When you go into the hearing and you filed for party status, which means you can call witnesses and bring people to testify for you, and then you automatically have standing to bring an appeal. Once you file for party status, you have filed a contested case. So this isn't a friendly process. That's contested. This is adversarial process from the very beginning. And the way that it's supposed to work is you're supposed to have an equal seat at the table. The developer is supposed to be able to say, you know, I want to do this project, or I don't want to do this project. The government is supposed to say, well, we're going to approve this project, we don't want to approve this project. And the community is supposed to be able to say, we want this here, we don't want this here. So there are 3 people involved, but the way that the process is kind of mutated is it's turned into government and the developer partnering. That's what they do all the time. And so now you're in an adversarial process against your government, and they're running the proceeding. And so these proceedings are pretty much sham hearings. And the thing that you do when you go there is to get stuff on the record so you can file an appeal. And that's where you get your partnership status with them. That's when you get to say, I want this in my neighborhood, or I don't, or I'm going to hold you up. And that's when you begin to have some leverage. You don't have any leverage at the hearing phase. At the hearing phase, the government is partnered with the developer. Everything that they do is going to be on their side. Don't get your hopes up. Don't get disappointed when you prepared this awesome testimony and they don't rule on your side. You won. You prepared the awesome testimony. You got it on the record. If they messed up, we can get them later on. But that's what the PUD process is to me. The PUD process is a place to get everything in the record. And the way that the PUD process is supposed to work, if it wasn't a sham hearing, if they weren't in the bed with developers, the way it's supposed to work is they're supposed to weigh the adverse impacts of a project. So, when they come in and they say, I'm going to plop this 2,000 unit apartment building here in this working class community of row homes, of low-lying row homes, they're supposed to consider the adverse impacts. And the statute and the comprehensive plan has a list of adverse impacts which they're allowed to consider. Case law has a list of adverse impacts they're allowed to consider. Recently, we discovered that gentrification is something they're supposed to consider. Displacement is something they're supposed to consider. Increases in taxes are something they're supposed to consider. All of this stuff was in the comprehensive plan, is in the statute, but since it's a sham hearing and they are in cooperation with the developers, they've been ignoring it. They just ignore it. They don't pay attention to it. And so you guys have been doing great, having no legal knowledge at all. People have been going to these hearings complaining about these things, and they've just been ignored. And now, finally, we appealed. This was through McMillan. We appealed. We won. The court says you have to consider these things. And so now, we went there. So now they sent it back to McMillan. And in McMillan, they're deciding, what does gentrification mean now? You said we have to consider it. What does it mean? And so now they're hiring consultants. The city, this is your mayor, your elected officials. Your elected officials are hiring consulting firms to define what gentrification is in a way so they can get past the zoning process with minimal hurdles. Minimal hurdles. And so the way that they've defined it, or not defined it, the way that they've kind of interpreted what they've said gentrification is they've said, well, we're going to build this huge McMillan project here, but we're not worried about gentrification because gentrification is so far gone. Like, yeah, it's already done. Like, it's done. Like, this is their reasoning. This is their reasoning. This is their reasoning. And so now we're appealing again. We're going to go back to court again. And we're going to keep going back till we get it right. And I appreciate Chris Otten a lot. I appreciate Chris Otten. Chris Otten, I was watching him testify yesterday. And I don't know if you guys, not testify, but he was cross-examining a witness actually. And I don't know if like you've ever been around like a kid who like touches something, you'd be like, don't touch that. And you don't touch it. And then like he's like, Dad, and, he's like trying to work away to touch it. And that's Chris Otten, man. Like Chris, he was trying to get an answer out of a guy. And since it's a sham, again, they wouldn't let him ask his question. And he would just change a word. Again, change a word, just keep changing the question just a little bit. And finally, they just got in a shouting match. But like, that's Chris. And so after we had won McMillan, like I wasn't even thinking to like, I was like, yeah, we won. And Chris is just filing. He's like, hey, can we file something here? You gonna be on this case? Yeah. And he's just filing this stuff all over the city. Stopping them. Because they're making the same mistakes everywhere. The same thing they did at McMillan, they've done on all the cases that they made decisions on in between that time. And so all this stuff coming is going to run into the same stuff that they messed up on in McMillan because they just haven't been doing it. And so you may have heard, I don't know if you heard on WAMU or like even in the Post, they wrote an article about Chris Otten calling him an extortionist. He's not an extortionist. See, this is their mentality. This is how they feel. Chris Otten brings you power. He brought you, he brought some equilibrium back to the PUD process, to where you're coming to the table as a partner now. And developers are like, well, damn, like I need to be in this stadium by 2018, or else I don't know where I'm gonna play my home games. So, you know, hey, like, what can I give you? Now they want to give you more than a Subway sandwich and 3 days of camp at their soccer facility, you know? Because you're a partner now in the process, because it's working how it should be, and this is how the PUD process helps. But
could you just say something about the zoning commission, who they are, and how, I think it's only 3 people, right?
I think it's like five.
Like
So,
something about the makeup.
okay, so it's three local residents, 3 I think people from DC, and then 2 people from like National Park Services, or like some federal body that represents like the federal interest in DC. Yeah, I think that's correct. Do you
talk about their appointment?
Nancy?
Yeah.
Nancy?
The architect of the Capitol has
Uh-huh.
a representative, and the National Park Service has a representative, and then the 3 DC residents are appointed by the mayor.
Thank
for
you.
year terms.
Say that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Naomi?
Can you talk about the lack of structural separation between the Deputy Mayor's Office of Economic Development and the Office of Planning, and how that may lead to biases in what happens through the zoning process?
Well, yeah, like I said, it's just a big, like, messy pool, you know, and it's all a sham, and there's no firewalls between anything. You know, government deals with the developers, different parts of the government that shouldn't be dealing with other parts of the government deal with it, and it's all just to create an economic engine. That's all it is. It's an economic engine. They've monetized our lives. They monetize. I mean, it's almost a question of human dignity, you know. And Most Def, one of my favorite rappers, he was talking. He has like a YouTube video. Everyone thinks he's crazy now. I think he's right on. But he has a YouTube video, and he was talking about that. You know, this is a battle for like dignity. Do we have the right? Do we have autonomy? Who controls our neighborhoods? Is it just for someone's economic interest? Are we units of purchasing power? Or are we, okay, go ahead.
I think it's really important to understand that the Office of Planning really has a conflict of interest in this process, because the Office of Planning works for the Deputy Mayor for planning and economic development. Basically, they are part of the mayor's economic team. They are trying to advocate for their economic development program. At the same time, the Office of Planning serves as the staff for the Zoning Commission, which is supposed to be an independent body. It is not supposed to be part of the government. But you've got the Office of Planning, who on this direction is with the Deputy Mayor for planning and economic development, and then over here somehow they have this unbiased role at serving as the staff for the Zoning Commission. The Zoning Commission has no independent staff whatsoever. They are totally dependent on the office.
I add one more thing. So the other agencies, Ari mentioned that once it becomes a contested case, right? Office of Planning, DDOT, Department of Transportation, OEE, Department of Environment, they're all supposed to submit reports about what they feel is proper or not proper against within the regulation or not within the regulation. And most of the time, those reports are usually done for the developer. They're actually talking. I've been in meetings in which the developer has meetings with DDOT. Bike lanes, for example, are one thing. Bike lanes are prioritized. Meanwhile, other issues are not prioritized that the community has. Why? Because you have other people lobbying for this in those closed door meetings. But then at the zoning commission level, you have these agencies that are supposed to speak on our behalf, are supposed to look at our well-being, and in their report they're supposed to say, no, unless you do this. Historic preservation is another one. Unless you follow this regulation, unless you do this, then you won't be able to do that. So that's where the mishap is, because these agencies are not advocating for us, and they're not writing what they're supposed to write in those reports.
Right. Yeah, I just want to follow up on what she was saying, that like they're required to, like DC Water, they're required to write a report about the impact of a 2,000 unit apartment building on the water supply of the areas when they increase the water pressure. I mean, who here is from Bloomingdale and has dealt with all those flooding, dealt with all the flooding over there? Well, I heard on good word is because they were just building all of these apartment buildings everywhere and they overtaxed the system. And they're supposed to present reports, and the reason why they don't do it, all of this stuff takes time. A report takes time. Even hiring a consultant to put together some BS report about gentrification is going to take time. You know, and these people have schedules, and so they don't do it. They're just ramming this stuff through. They're just ramming it through. But yeah, no, okay.
Round of applause.